The Wyoming sun beat down hard on Jake Mallister as he pushed his tired mare along a lonely trail that cut through the wild frontier. 3 years had passed since he buried Sarah, the only woman he had ever loved. 3 years of waking to silence, eating alone, and going to sleep with nothing but memories. Her wedding ring hung from a rawhide cord around his neck, thumping against his chest with every step he took, reminding him of everything he had lost. His ranch was falling apart. Fences sagged, cattle wandered, and debts climbed higher than he could ever pay. But Jake kept going, because men like him had no other choice. Out here, a man survived, or he died. There was no middle ground. That morning had started like any other. He rode out to check fence lines and look for strays. The land stretched wide and empty around him, nothing but dust, brush, and faraway mountains. Then he saw something that froze him in his saddle. Wagon pieces scattered across the trail, wood splintered, canvas torn, wheels broken in half. It looked like bones scattered across the dirt. A hot wind blew through the wreckage, making the torn canvas flap like a wounded bird. The smell hit him next, that heavy, metallic smell that always meant death. Jake climbed down slowly, his hand moving to the rifle strapped to his saddle. When he stepped closer, he saw them, 4 bodies lying in the dirt. Men cut down where they stood, blood soaking into the ground until it turned dark. Bandits. Raiders. Whoever they were, they had shown no mercy. Jake knelt beside the closest man, a young fellow with wide, open eyes staring at the sky. Jake whispered a prayer Sarah had taught him back when life felt whole. Then he stood again, jaw tight, heart heavy. That was when he heard the sound. A small, faint moan carried on the wind. Jake spun toward the wagon, pulse hammering. He moved fast around the broken wheel and saw her lying half-buried under splintered wood. A woman, her dress torn and stained, her dark hair tangled with dirt and blood. She looked like she had been thrown aside and forgotten. Her chest rose in tiny, weak breaths. Jake lifted the boards carefully and pulled her close. Her eyes fluttered open, wild with fear, and she pushed weakly against him like she thought he was another killer. "Easy now," Jake said softly, his voice rough but gentle. "I am not here to hurt you. Let me help you." He held his canteen to her lips. She drank in desperate, shaky gulps. Blood trickled down from a deep cut on her forehead, and her shoulder looked torn from a bullet that had only barely missed ending her life. Something about her did not fit. Her dress was fine and expensive, fabric he had never seen on a settler's wife. And when she finally whispered words, the accent in her voice was clean, sharp, and refined. "Not the kind of sound you heard out here on the frontier. They came at dawn," she whispered. "Bandits. Everyone else is gone." Jake nodded, ripping pieces from his own shirt to make bandages. "We need to get you to Medicine Bow Station. Hold on." He lifted her carefully, feeling how light she was, how she trembled against him. He tied her to his horse and searched the wagon one last time before leaving. In the dirt, he found a cameo brooch with a woman's profile carved into it and a family crest he did not recognize. He slipped it into his pocket, figuring she would want it back. They rode long and hard toward Medicine Bow. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness, her head resting against Jake's chest while the sun beat down on both of them. By the time they reached the small station, Jake's shirt was soaked with sweat and her blood. Dr. Wilford Graham, an aging doctor with steady hands and kind eyes, worked quickly. "Bullet graze, scalp wound, shock," the doctor muttered as he stitched and bandaged. "She is lucky you found her, Jake." Jake stood in the corner with his hat in his hands, helpless and afraid in a way he had not felt since Sarah died. Not again, he thought. Please, not again. When the doctor finally stepped away, he gave Jake a tired smile. She will live. That night, Jake stayed by her side, refusing to rest. The battered trunk they had saved from the wagon sat in the corner. The crest stamped into the leather matched the one on the cameo. Jake wondered who she really was, but he pushed the thought aside. Morning would bring answers. At dawn, the woman stirred. She blinked up at the ceiling before her eyes found Jake sitting in the chair beside her. "You are safe," he said gently. "This is Doc Graham's place." She nodded faintly. Her voice was soft but steady when she spoke. "Thank you." Jake introduced himself. She gave her name as Charlotte Ashby, but something in her voice told Jake she was hiding a truth too heavy for her broken body to carry. Still, he offered her a place at his ranch until she recovered. What he did not know was that saving her would pull him back into a world of danger, secrets, and a kind of love he thought he would never feel again. The ride to Jake's ranch took most of the day. Charlotte sat straight on the horse, but he could tell she was holding herself together with nothing but will. Her shoulders still throbbed, and every step the mare took sent a tremor through her thin frame. She did not complain once. When they reached the ridge overlooking his ranch, Jake felt that familiar ache in his chest. The place he once built with pride stood worn down. Fences leaned, the barn roof sagged, and weeds crept along the yard. He had been fighting a losing battle ever since Sarah died. "It ain't much," he said quietly as they rode in, "but you will be safe here." Charlotte looked around with soft eyes. "It is more kindness than I have known in a long time." Jake settled her into Sarah's old room. The floral curtains Sarah had sewn still hung over the window, faded, but gentle. Jake hesitated at the doorway as memories washed over him. But Charlotte needed a place to heal, and no one had slept in that room for years. "Rest now," he said. "I will make supper." In the kitchen, Jake took out the cameo he had found. Under the lamplight, the crest gleamed. An elegant design with a crown carved above the initials. Harrington. Definitely not Ashby. A family with money. A family that held power. Charlotte was lying, but Jake pushed the thought away. She was hurt, afraid. He would not press her, not until she was strong enough to speak freely. They ate a simple meal in silence until Charlotte lifted her head and met his eyes. Her voice was soft but firm. "You have been nothing but kind. I cannot repay that with lies." Jake stayed still as she reached for the cameo. "My real name is Charlotte Harrington," she said. "That brooch belonged to my mother, the Duchess of Warrington." Jake felt the words like a punch. A duchess. A woman from wealth and nobility sitting at his worn-out kitchen table. Eating beans from a tin plate. Wearing bandages made from his torn shirt. Charlotte continued, tears gathering. "I traveled here with my uncle. We used false names to avoid attention. Someone must have known who we were. Someone wanted what we carried." Jake took a slow breath. "Your secret stays with me," he said. But danger still hung heavy in the air. The next days passed in a careful rhythm. Charlotte healed slowly. She tried to help around the ranch, even though her hands shook, and she clearly had no idea how to do simple chores. Jake pretended not to notice when she held the broom like she was handling a delicate instrument or washed dishes with the rigid posture of a woman raised by servants. But her effort touched something in him, something buried deep. On the fourth day, Sheriff Amos Bailey rode up with 3 deputies. Dust swirled around their horses. Jake stepped outside, rifle in reach, heart pounding. "Afternoon, Jake," the sheriff said. "Heard you brought someone back from Medicine Bow. Mind if we speak with her?" Charlotte stepped into the light with the grace of someone who had been raised to face attention. She kept her story simple. Bandits. A surprise attack. She remembered only pieces of the ambush. Sheriff Bailey watched her carefully. He noticed the way she spoke. The posture. The fine manners. But he said nothing. "Let us know if something comes back to you," he said as he left. When the riders disappeared, Charlotte whispered, "He suspects something." "Bailey is no fool," Jake said, "but he is fair. He will not harm you." Still, the warning was clear. Someone dangerous was looking for her. That night, she asked to send a coded telegram to her mother. Jake strapped on his hat and made the long ride to Medicine Bow. The telegraph operator joked that Jake must have found himself a high-class woman. Jake brushed it off, but his thoughts churned the whole ride home. 2 days later, a courier arrived with the reply. Charlotte read it once, then again, her face draining of color. Suspect betrayal inside your uncle's circle. Trust no one. Jake's jaw tightened. That meant the attack was planned. This was no random raid. Someone close to Charlotte wanted her dead. Before they could talk about the message, Jake noticed new tracks around the barn. Boot prints. Fresh. 3 sets. Someone had been watching them. "We have to leave," Jake said. "Now." They packed quick, but danger came faster. A rifle shot cracked through the yard, splinters flying from the barn walls. Charlotte screamed as Jake grabbed her and pulled her behind a water trough. 3 riders appeared on a ridge, rifles raised, bandanas hiding their faces. Jake fired back, forcing them to duck. He shouted for Charlotte to run for the horses. Bullets tore into the ground around them as they sprinted. They mounted and bolted through the gate, hooves pounding across the open land. The killers chased close behind. Jake guided them toward a canyon he knew well. A narrow passage with walls so steep a single man could hold it. If they made it in, they had a chance. But as they entered the canyon, gunfire rained down from above. The killers had outflanked them. Jake spotted a deer trail winding up the canyon wall. He led Charlotte upward, the horses clawing for footing on the loose stones. "Give us the girl and walk away," a voice shouted above. Jake answered with a rifle round that echoed off the stone. Then, out of nowhere, fresh gunfire burst across the ridge. Jake looked up and saw soldiers in blue coats firing down at the attackers. A cavalry patrol. Within minutes, the ambushers fled in confusion. A tall scout climbed toward them. His weathered face and steady eyes carried authority. "Lieutenant Avery of the U.S. Cavalry," he said. "We heard shots. You folks better come with us." With danger still close and Charlotte trembling beside him, Jake nodded. He feared this was only the beginning. The journey to Fort Laramie passed in a blur of dust, pain, and tight protection. The cavalry patrol surrounded Jake and Charlotte as they rode, rifles ready. Charlotte stayed close to Jake's side, her injured shoulder wrapped tight, her eyes watchful. She did not complain once, but he could see fear buried deep inside her. At the fort, they were taken to an office where the territorial governor listened to everything. The soldiers had captured one bandit who had been chasing them. Under pressure, the man finally spoke. He said the attack was ordered by a man named Harcourt, a business partner in London. Harcourt wanted to silence Charlotte before she uncovered corrupt dealings in her uncle's finances. Charlotte's face went pale. Harcourt was someone her family trusted. Someone close. Someone who knew the route they were traveling and the false names they used. Jake clenched his jaw. This meant danger had followed her from across the ocean. Someone had wanted her dead from the start. The governor promised full justice. He arranged safe housing for both of them in his mansion while telegrams flew across the ocean. Charlotte's mother, the Duchess, demanded Harcourt be arrested. Evidence came fast. Bank records, letters, testimonies. Everything pointed to betrayal. Through the long days that followed, Jake felt out of place in the mansion. Marble floors, crystal lamps, servants moving like shadows. He had known dust, cattle, and open sky his entire life. Here, everything felt too polished, too perfect, too far from the world he understood. Each time he stepped away from the noise, Charlotte found him. She walked with him through the gardens, sat beside him during long meals, talked to him gently when the silence between them grew heavy. She brought him calm in a place that felt too large. But he knew the truth. She belonged to that world. He did not. On the night before she was set to return to England, Jake stood alone on the balcony, overlooking the lights of Cheyenne. Wind moved across the city, carrying voices and distant laughter. He tried to accept that their paths were about to split. Charlotte stepped out behind him. Her dress rustled softly. Her eyes were full of sadness. "My family expects me to return," she said quietly. "To stand in court, to take over the estates, to do what a Harrington must do." Jake nodded, staring at the ground. "You should do what is right. Your home is there. Your life is there." Charlotte turned her face toward him. "What if I do not want to go back? What if my home is not in England anymore? Jake swallowed hard. Charlotte, I am just a rancher holding my life together with frayed rope. You deserve a safer world than mine. Tears rolled down her cheeks. A safer world means nothing without someone to share it with. You saved me, Jake, not only from death. You saved me from a life where I never understood what real love was. She took his hand and pressed it to her heart. I love you, Jake Mallister. His breath caught. He reached for the rawhide cord around his neck, the one holding Sarah's ring, the one he had not taken off in 3 years. His hand shook as he lifted it free. Sarah, he whispered inside his heart, forgive me. He placed the ring in Charlotte's palm. Sarah was my world. I never thought I would love again. But you came into my life like a second chance. If you want a life with me, it will be hard. It will be rough. But I will spend every day trying to make you happy. Charlotte stepped into his arms, and their kiss sealed the promise. The next morning, Charlotte's mother arrived from England. To everyone's surprise, the Duchess supported her daughter's choice. She even helped set up legal reasons for Charlotte to remain in Wyoming, while still keeping ties to her family across the ocean. Funds were sent to rebuild Jake's ranch. A small group of guards was assigned to protect them while Hardcourt faced justice. Suddenly, the future did not look as dark. When Jake and Charlotte returned to the ranch, everything changed. New lumber replaced the old. Broken fences were fixed. The barn roof was repaired. The land came alive again with hope. Under Charlotte's guidance, the ranch took on new life. She learned to cook, to manage accounts, to ride better, and to work with her own hands. She was not the frightened noblewoman he first found on the trail. She was stronger now, braver. On a quiet afternoon in the flower garden Sarah had planted years ago, Charlotte and Jake were married. No royal decorations, no grand ceremony, just the local preacher, a few neighbors, and the wide Wyoming sky above them. Charlotte wore a simple white dress. The cameo with the Harrington crest shone at her heart. Jake slipped a new ring on her finger, his hand trembling. When they kissed as husband and wife, the sun broke through the clouds, warm and bright, like a blessing on the land. The wounds of the past did not disappear, but they learned to live with them. Together they built a life full of trust, courage, and a love that neither danger nor fate could break. Jake Mallister, the widower who believed his heart had died with Sarah, found healing and hope in Charlotte Harrington, the noblewoman who found her true strength in the wild frontier. And the winds of Wyoming carried their story across the plains, whispering that even in the harshest land, 2 broken hearts can build a new beginning.